Fab. Hi everyone, welcome to the fourth online sharing session that Open Data Manchester are hosting for the Right to the Streets project. Right to the Streets project is a project that's been funded by the Home Office Safer Streets Fund. And it's really about reducing violence against women and girls and creating inclusive, active streets and public spaces. And these online sharing sessions are for each of the partners to share their contribution to the Right to the Streets project and kind of give more insight into what they've done, how it's been applied. And this session in particular will be focusing on Greater Manchester Moving's, formerly known as Greater Sports, kind of contribution, along with Verity and Ella. So I'm going to pass on to Imogen from Greater Manchester Moving, who will begin.
Thanks, Tori. Yeah, I'm just gonna bear with me while I get the right screen going.
I also want to say, feel free to use the chat for questions that will be addressed at the end.
Okay, so can I check with, can someone give me a thumbs up that you can see the screen and not my notes? Because that would be great. Cool, thanks. Well, yeah, hi everyone. It's so nice that you joined us today. And especially nice that I'm seeing kind of names in the chat and around the screen that I kind of recognize either just over email, but might not necessarily met in person. So it's really great that you're here. So thank you for that. I'm Imogen, for people who don't know me. I'm the project lead for the Right to the Streets project, and I work for Greater Manchester Moving. So yeah, this session is about how through this project we're helping empower women and girls to be active in their communities, which is a large part of what we do as an organisation, but also a key kind of focus of the Right to the Streets project as well. So Tori touched on this as well in the intro, but Greater Manchester Moving is GM's movement for movement. We're working together across different sectors with a lot of different partners to kind of positively change the lives of people across Greater Manchester as a whole through movement and physical activity and sport. Our kind of key priorities are kind of that understanding, that awareness that moving matters to all of us, no matter what it looks like. We need to design movement back into everyday lives, particularly after COVID, and more of a kind of call to action and a recognition that we all have a part to play in creating the conditions for that to happen. So we take a whole system approach to enabling active lives for everyone and creating those conditions where people are able to move around freely and safely. By moving more, we can all live happier and healthy lives, which kind of enables communities, our places, the economy to thrive and contribute to generally a more sustainable city region. So this is the onion of power, and this is kind of just an explanation of that kind of whole system approach, because I know some of these kind of the language can be a bit misleading or a bit confusing at times, but to kind of break it down, these are kind of the different layers of factors that contribute to our way of living and how we live our lives. You can see at the top, it's kind of behavior change right through to the individual's experiences and using this to kind of inform action. So through the Right to the Streets project, we're kind of applying this whole system approach. We take as kind of Greater Manchester Moving to Right to the Streets and working with people and partners in Trafford and local residents to understand how we can create those conditions for everyone to lead active lives. Trafford, as you may or not know, Trafford is known for kind of its sports and culture. This is kind of seen in the Women's Euros last year, women's football, that's skyrocketed since then as well, and with the women's football, the World Cup as well, that was really apparent. Obviously have Manchester United football ground, the cricket ground, Victoria Warehouse, and other kind of key venues. And what we found is that there is this desire to engage and participate in those kind of spaces, but not everyone currently has equal access to do that. So the barriers that we've been kind of looking at through this project is violence against women and girls, and the design of the physical environment preventing people to move about freely and live the lives they want. So just to kind of give some context, more Trafford focused, it was kind of through back in 2021 and 2022, it was through mass surveys and workshops and conversations that local people were having with elected representatives about kind of safety concerns and key barriers relating to specific locations or destinations or travel routes that all kind of were contributing to women and girls feeling unsafe and unable to move around and get around. So this kind of vision of making public spaces and streets safe and welcoming places where everyone, particularly women and girls, feel that they can belong and are invited to be active is kind of key part of this. It's the key focus of the project and kind of emerged as a key priority quite early on. Which then brings us to Right to the Streets. So as kind of touched on just then, we're working with residents and local organisations and wider system partners across both Trafford and Greater Manchester generally to understand how we can create these conditions in place with local people where it matters most and where we can make that difference. Involving local people at the heart of the project, using kind of these insights that helped kind of lay the foundation of it, but also knowing local knowledge, experiences and expertise in the areas to drive this agenda forward and kind of instill real change through a range of interventions that we've been trialing throughout this whole project that started in September last year, all kind of focusing on applying a gendered lens to our public spaces and general infrastructure. So to give you an idea of kind of what initially was kind of set out, we held a launch event in October last year where we put this photo up based on kind of initial findings that came out of those original insights around kind of key focus areas and some of the key partners. So the core partnership, the white boxes that kind of were kind of the original partners that had different areas of expertise that were contributing to this project. And then the yellow ones were the types of interventions that we were kind of made aware would be good to explore throughout this project. Since then, this slide is just to give you an idea of how much this has grown. So we went from 6 core partners to, I couldn't even fit everyone on the page, to give you an idea of just the range of organizations, local people, local groups, who have been contributing to this project and been involved in some way in helping kind of make these conditions for women and girls to live safe and active lives. So I just wanted to leave that there. And kind of, yeah, this is what's really helped to make this happen. It wouldn't have happened without all these different people being involved. And through that, if you remember back to a previous slide of those yellow boxes of interventions, there are about 5 there. This is then kind of what the interventions look like throughout the project and how much they've grown as well. So I just wanted to focus on the walking, reading and cycling element for this particular session to really kind of highlight how much it's grown, the impact that community cohesion has had on creating safe and joyful places. This is all kind of part of this vision to change the narrative around violence against women and girls, the conversations we're having there, changing that from kind of seeing women as victims and men as perpetrators to one that focuses more on freedom and freedom to move around and empowerment and confidence to do so. So at the launch event, we had various kind of stalls that people could be involved in. This was the walking, wheeling and cycling one where we asked people kind of what they'd like to see, local groups driving this agenda forward already, just so we have an idea of like the current landscape. And from there, this really helped lay the foundation for what was to follow. And this was all kind of contributions by local people. So yeah, we can kind of just pick some out there. Art walks or places of interest to make walks more kind of interesting and visual and fun and joyful. Travel on match days was a big one that came up quite a lot. Wellbeing walks, perceptions of cycling and access to bike libraries, community walks, covered cycle schedules. I mean, there's a whole range, but this is just to give you a little taster. From here, we then held a walking, winning, cycling activation workshop to identify kind of the key themes and go focus in on them a bit more and establish kind of tangible next steps with how to actually design this in place, come up with an action plan and pledges from people who are in the room, all kind of focusing on how we create those kind of safe, free, accessible places where people can have the option to travel and just to move around in daily life as well. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with word clouds, but this was something, a kind of activity that we had as part of that activation workshop. And the more people submit, you know, it was online, the more people submit a particular word, the bigger it appears on this on this slide. So belonging, for example, and safety and accessible are kind of stand out because a lot of people were saying the same things, which is really interesting. And obviously was a focus point for kind of the plans and the next steps that came afterwards. And also some other ones you can see around the screen are things like fun and empower and freedom and inclusive, joyful. So it was just a really good visual way to see what people wanted when it came to kind of more active forms of travel and access to those. So this is something, just an example of what's happened since then. That activation workshop was back in April, and a lot has happened since then throughout the project generally, but particularly through this kind of walking, winning, and cycling agenda. So something that kind of came up as a general kind of a want and a need was more awareness, knowledge and opportunities to walk, wheel and cycle. And since then, through this kind of action plan and identifying these different the different kind of next steps that we were taking, these are kind of just some of the examples of ways and things that have happened since then. So I won't read it all out because, you know, that's not helpful. But we can share the slides with people as well. And obviously this is recorded to look back on, but consulted with local groups to identify and map 3 different walking, wheeling and cycling routes in the kind of focus areas of this project, which have been Old Trafford and Gorse Hill. Connecting these routes to local art trails, making those trails more exciting and interesting, really connecting in with another element of the project, which has been the creative interventions that have been being delivered and co-designed by local arts organisations in the areas, along with local residents. They are still ongoing now throughout September. So if you want to get involved, it's all on our website page. In terms of these walking routes, connecting those through green spaces as well. Parks is obviously a key space that women and girls identified as feeling quite unsafe in, particularly at night. So just kind of making those routes a bit more joyful and more inviting and welcoming to people. Points of interest as well. Establishing the need for safer school streets, so working with Love Old Trafford and local schools to offer cycling courses for children and parents, as well as bike maintenance workshops for women and girls to help build that confidence and resilience on the road and to feel kind of independent and empowered to take that active form of travel over a car, for example. And then Open Data Manchester have been kind of focusing on understanding and mapping people's experiences and perceptions of safety and belonging when moving around, which has really contributed to then kind of those walking routes and the cycle provisions that we're doing now, and also offering kind of community grants to local groups who shared this passion for creating safe and joyful places where people, particularly women and girls, can move around freely. And Verity is going to go into a bit more of that in a minute. But that's been really, really interesting and has been key in kind of embedding all this work in place with local people, which has been really lovely. So this is all kind of part of reimagining and rehumanizing what our spaces look like and these kind of routes and active travel options. It's just rehumanizing what that looks like and putting the joy back into the journey. And as I mentioned before, that wouldn't have happened and it wouldn't be relevant to local people if it weren't for their kind of insights and input and experiences and us kind of having those conversations with them along the way to kind of steer the direction of what that looks like and how we can make that happen. This is really important with legacy as well, kind of supporting other organizations and local people to kind of think through a gendered lens in their spaces. Also establishing advocates in the community to help drive this work forward, making these routes and transport options more accessible and safe, and also with things like the bike maintenance workshops, and kind of doing walking groups together, being part of that community and that sense of belonging is really kind of helping women and girls know that kind of they care for the bikes and feel confident to use them, feel confident moving around in everyday life, increase access to kind of bikes and visibility of the current opportunities in the area as well. I think a lot of the time it's not that these things don't exist, it's that people don't know about them. So it's that kind of increased awareness and knowledge and understanding of where to go, but also kind of using the assets in the community and kind of making people feel welcoming and safe already, and pooling together those resources. The place reviews that Open Data Manchester are working on as well can be used in the future to help people understand how their spaces make other people feel, which will be really important and really useful for then kind of working towards making spaces more inclusive, particularly when we're talking about just people moving around in daily life. These are just some of the key partners that have been involved in this walking, wheeling and cycling work. And yeah, have been just great in terms of just thinking ahead with kind of how do we embed this and how do we ensure that this doesn't just stop after September, which is when the official funding of the project comes to an end. So those are the kind of conversations that we've been thinking about throughout kind of the year, but particularly in the last 6 months when there's been a lot of delivery happening. So it'd be great to it kind of just reiterated that it's not too late to get involved. This isn't a fixed project, it's a vision, and it's a movement and it's approach that we hope will kind of continue, and that people will use in their spaces as well to make generally everyone feel a bit more welcome and safe in the spaces that they're in. And this just a kind of a last slide is yeah, how to get involved. Feel free to email me at any time. We have a website page, we have a mailing list, we have a podcast which also goes into a lot of what we're talking about throughout these sharing sessions as well. We have an Instagram page which has been kind of the home of the No Place for It campaign, which is focusing on street harassment and sexual harassment. And then, yeah, as mentioned previously, it have a range of different community activities taking place, including the celebration event on the 24th of September. If anyone is around, it's completely open to everyone, and it would be a really good opportunity to hear kind of from different partners, but also just to see the breadth of what's going on. So it would be great to see you there. I'm going to hand over now to Verity to talk a bit more about the community grants. If I can get my screen to stop. Success.
Thanks, Imogen. Hi, everyone. Feeling a little bit nervous, actually, so bear with me. I'm just going to share my screen because I've got some slides as well. Here we go. Can you see this? Yeah. So I am the community connector for Right to the Streets, and I was brought in June to sort of be on the ground, out in the community, speaking to people, finding out, what people do, where they go, and, how this project could help, essentially. So my first point of call was to make an introduction poster, which I must say I did steal an idea from somewhere else when I went to a community hub and I saw someone else had done it. I was like, that's a great idea. My face, some information, contact details. And I shared that by WhatsApp groups in the area, printing posters out, going to community hubs, putting them in the notice boards, and just sort of generally like doing a little bit of, I don't know, groundwork, sort of telling people about the project and what was to come. I also attended lots of meetings and started to get to know people, got on loads of mailing lists, and yeah, just kind of embedded myself into what was going to be like the patch. So we've got Old Trafford, Gorse Hill and Stretford. Then we drafted the community grant fund. We had £17,500 to disseminate amongst the community, and we decided to make it really accessible. We had two pots, one which was up to 500, which was for individuals. And the feedback that I've got from the community is that they never get an opportunity to apply for funding. So normally you have to be a constituted organisation. And so a lot of individuals were like really happy to be able to have this opportunity, this experience. So from 500 to £2,000, we offered that to constituted organisations. But what we also did was speak to organisations who are constituted. And I, again, being out in the community, I said, if an individual wants more than 500, they can go to an organisation who's willing to put in the bid for them. So we're just sort of galvanising people together. So the application form, we wanted to be super simple and easy. It was, I don't know, 5 questions really. And we allowed people the opportunity to apply in multiple ways, video, voice message, phone call, and then in person, like written. So we really wanted to make it available to everybody. We also offered sessions for people where English isn't their first language. And we did a bid writing session, which was online and free. And we had about 70 sign-ups and about 25 people attend. So that just shows what like the appetite is in the area. I also did some face-to-face sessions where I invited people just to come and have a chat, ask some questions. And again, it's in those conversations where you can sort of think of something that someone said and you're like, oh, I know, so-and-so can do this and that. And it just, it brings people together. Then we did a gathering in Seymour Park, which was lovely again, because it's people that aren't necessarily on email and WhatsApp all the time. They just really appreciated coming and having a delicious samosa and like having a chat face to face. That's it. You might recognize this graphic because I've repurposed it from Imogen's, but this is just a sort of snapshot of some of the projects that we've got. We've got individuals that are clearing and painting and planting in their alleyways. We've got several different walking groups. We've got walking groups that are doing mindful meditation or yoga or bushcraft, learning to ride a bike, forest bathing, family fun days, and just an amazing mix of different things that the community want, essentially. Again, this is a bit more of a breakdown of the things, but you know, I think we must have had about, I don't know, 50, 65 events already just this month. So everything has to happen before the end of September. So it's been quite a quick turnaround. But I think in that amount of time, we've done a huge amount of work. We've like created so many opportunities and connected so many people together that I think, you know, beyond September, there will be legacy, as Imogen mentioned, that there will be connections, there will be people doing stuff on their own or knowing where to go for support, which is essentially what I think a lot of my job has been about. It's about realizing things for people, helping people. And part of that is my promise that each of the community grants, and there are 21 of them, that I will link them to more funding or connect them with an organisation that can support them beyond this project. One of the best applications we had, and something that just absolutely encapsulated the essence of this project, was our goal. So Ella, who is with us today, she sent me a video application, and she told me the reason why she was so engaged with the project. And now she's running football sessions for women and girls every Saturday in Seymour Park, which we couldn't be more chuffed about. And yeah, we know that there's a legacy going on here. Like there's heart and soul, and Ella is going to talk a little bit. This is our goal. So it's multi-generational age groups, Seymour Park. Yeah, she did her first session last week, and we know that beyond this project, we will be working with Ella. She's going to go places, and it is like one of the sort of the most real applications and essence of Right to the Streets. So with that,
shall I speak?
Yes, please.
Thanks. Okay, I'll try again. Hopefully this works. Let me know if it's not working. I can give a very brief summary in the chat. It won't be the same. So my organisation is Our Goal, which was founded basically because of working with a lot of girls and women in football and realising that these women all share important characteristics, which is that they are confident and vocal and strong women. So our goal is trying to harness the power of football to empower girls and women. Our particular Right to the Streets project is free football for girls and women. So every Saturday in September, I'll just see in the message, it seems fair, so hopefully this is okay. Saturday in September, we're in free football sessions. Okay, I'll try to turn off my video. Let's see if this is any better. Free football sessions for girls and women. So it's turn up and play, an hour of football, like across the age groups. I first heard about the Right to the Streets project through an organisation called Thrive. So they're like social enterprise support in Trafford. And when I heard about what the organisation stood for, that the initiative stood for, it was something that I really wanted to be part of from Our Goal, because, you know, they're about creating safe and welcoming spaces for girls and women. And that is exactly what we are also trying to do at Our Goal. We're creating safe, accessible, female-only spaces for girls and women to be active and to try football. So we had our first session last week, which went really well. We had a mix of girls and women. Some had played before, some had not. And like, just as a little sort of anecdote of a couple of the people that joined us, one of the younger age groups, a girl called Eleanor came, who had never played football before, but was desperate to, because all of her friends at school are playing. And she came and she was so shy, like she would not leave her mum's side. And eventually she came over, sort of introduced her really slowly to the session, like got her doing a bit of passing. Then other girls were really welcoming with her. And by the end of the session, she'd scored 2 goals. She was like running around the pitch. And her mum sent me an email that evening to say, like, just to thank us for putting the session on, because she's really, really shy. And actually she had a really great time, and she's dead excited to come back for the next session, which is actually tomorrow. And then in the open age session, we had a mum. So a mum had brought her daughter to one of the youth sessions, and then she stayed on. I sort of like convinced her to try the open age session. She had to leave early because she had an appointment, and she ended up actually just not going to her appointment because she was having so much fun in the open age session. So it just shows, like, sometimes the opportunity is not there for women and girls to play football, but when they actually give it a try in a safe space, it can, like, they usually always really enjoy it. So the Right to the Streets has been really helpful for our goal, in terms of it's just given us a bit of a platform to really like kick off the business, and it aligns so well with what we're trying to do, and that's helped our impact for our sort of first proper event. We've been connected with obviously all of the organizations that are involved. Like, it's great to have the contacts of everyone else that's working on the project, and it's also helping girls in football, because after a massive event like the World Cup, which we've just had, interest in the sport spikes, and there's not always opportunities for girls and women to get involved. So these sessions, being free and being local, are it just breaks down those barriers for girls and women to get involved, and it makes it more accessible. And actually, I sort of forgot to put this into my presentation, but just quickly on the legacy of what we're doing. Like, part of the bid that I put in for our goal was to give all of the participants a football at the end of the session, so that even if they're not able to start training in a local club or whatever, they've at least got a football, so they can continue with the park football themselves. And I've actually been thinking recently about how we can grow the park football initiative. So like, this is a big dream and not necessarily one that will come true, but like, you know, we have park run. Like, is there something there where actually we can empower women from their own communities in their own parks to start delivering the same sort of free park sessions? So yeah, hopefully you could hear that this time. I'll put my camera back on. Just have terrible Wi-Fi in my house.
Yeah, that was fab. Thank you so much. Thank you to Ella, Imogen, and Verity, who shared the work that they've been doing about the project so far. During that time, we did have some questions. If you do have a question, you can raise your hand whilst I just cover some of the ones that we had in the chat. Questions, comments, anything really. But the first one was about, I'll pose it to Imogen, about, would you talk more about the interventions specifically in relation to women's safety being improved?
Yeah. So yeah, we didn't feel it was I didn't have enough time to go into all the different interventions themselves, but I think this is a good opportunity to just give a little overview of some of the other things that are going on as part of this project as well. So relating still to the walking, wheeling, cycling work that's been going on, the routes were identified and co-designed by and for local people, and the kind of last slide that kind of hit it out was that then the idea is that people, if local people are designing it and having that input themselves, they're more likely to know kind of more likely to kind of want to be a part of it, more likely to feel confident using it, having familiarity with the routes, more likely to kind of continue using those routes if they're the ones that have been identified that people use in daily life anyway. So that was kind of the intention with the walking, wheeling, cycling routes, to actually co-design it with local people. So that's kind of one aspect. Another part of it is being kind of our kind of role is connecting people to each other in the place. So connecting women and groups together, doing things together brings joy and makes people feel safer. And it's more likely that people will use the space if they see other people using it too, and especially people that look like them. So representation was really key in this, and understanding that spaces that feel safe and welcoming to walk, wheel and cycle along, making those recommendations, involving communities in those decisions. More women and girls are moving around the space, supporting the cultural change themselves, because people do want to walk, wheel and cycle. The barriers kind of depend on, you know, it can range from experiences and perceptions of safety and violence against women and girls on the street, but it's also things like time of day, time of year, those kind of considerations that we need to think about when we're designing a place and thinking about what makes people feel welcome to be there. Other barriers were kind of lack of confidence when it came to cycling, and improved cycle provision. So we tried to talk to local people about just access and visibility of either current things that were on offer in either Trafford or Greater Manchester, or if it wasn't, kind of working together to really envision and think about what that could look like, and then work with local people to actually put that into practice. And then there was another question, wasn't there?
Yes, about the nighttime economy.
Oh wait, I didn't see that one. What was that one?
It was, I think it was touched on during your presentation, and I just wanted you to elaborate a bit more.
On the nighttime economy.
Hiya.
Hi.
It's James. I
Hi,
asked
James.
that question. It was directly, just so not in the main chat, just as an add-on. So just to
Okay.
explain it, that quite a lot of the feeling of unsafe, quite a lot of bullying, harassment takes place within the nighttime economy. And I just wondered if any of your work had captured that, and are you linked to the work that goes on around the nighttime economy?
Yes, yeah, very much so. So on the, I'm not sure if you've listened to the podcast, but there's an episode specifically around kind of the nighttime economy, and the kind of the plans to make that safer. We spoke to Sasha Lord on that episode, as well as kind of local people as well. It's a really, really good episode. They speak to a group of young women, and I think they're a group of young men as well, who are all queuing outside Victoria Warehouse to get into a gig. So it's kind of feeding in those kind of wider systematic works that's going on to kind of address violence against women and girls, and safety when it comes to kind of the nighttime economy, but also kind of hearing those local experience and perceptions of safety in those spaces as well. So would definitely recommend listening to that episode if you haven't already. But it is something that we're really aware of in this project as well, particularly that kind of age range of kind of between 18 and 35 really were identified, which is why the campaign that one of our partners, Diva, has been working on. It's called the No Place for It campaign. It's talking about sexual harassment. And that is based on findings, and speaking to kind of people in that age range between 18 and 35 around their experiences, a lot of which do relate to kind of the nighttime economy and feeling unsafe at night. So it's really, really, really interesting. I would recommend kind of looking at all those different resources on the website for that, and also the campaign, because from there we've kind of then, it's become a key cornerstone, the kind of bystander intervention element, which has been another kind of key piece of work that's gone on throughout this project, working with Freedom Personal Safety to deliver active bystander sessions in the community with local organisations and residents as well, to really understand different perspectives and different experiences of safety and belonging, and also kind of changing that narrative to one where we can all do our part to make everyone around us feel safer, which obviously includes the nighttime economy as well. So that focuses on the 5 Ds in terms of practical tactics that people can adopt in everyday life. So there have been quite a few different things going on, and it kind of ties into your other question as well. I think it was you, James, in the chat asking about the contribution of men and boys in this project as well. And yes, there really has been, to get that kind of wider picture, and more accurate reflection of the current landscape in terms of different perspectives of safety and belonging, has really helped kind of identify the difference between kind of men and boys' experiences on the street and women and girls, but also as kind of key allies in this work is really, really important to help drive this forward. We kind of rely on men and boys to help move this agenda forward, and help kind of have those conversations in spaces, help call out friends when there are comments and that when things happen on the streets that you witness. So that's what the kind of bystander element is all about. We also have, we're working with an organisation called Progressive Masculinity through this project as well, who's delivering sessions to young men and boys in schools in the area in September. So they're actually happening this month, and that would be really, really interesting. And it ties into kind of those attitudes towards women, and safety on the streets, and things like that. So it'd be really, really interesting to hear what comes out of that. But yes, absolutely, kind of the involvement of men and boys in this has been really key as well. feel I rambled there.
That was fab. I also wanted to say that Freedom Personal Safety also have a sharing session, which won't be next week, but the week after. So that might be something of interest to some of you. We've got another question in the chat. What do you consider to be the biggest legacy or game changer from the work you've been doing in the Trafford areas that will make this activity easier in the future?
Good question. I don't know if anyone else wants to answer this, but
yeah, I don't mind jumping in. It sounds very simple, but I think it's essentially just about relationship building and knowing where to go and who to ask about certain things. That is the thing that will continue, because people there's so much going on already. But how do you find out about it? There's not one website or notice board that has everything. So you kind of have to know where to go to ask. And I think just from this project, we've already strengthened so many relationships and started new ones that we're now empowering people to know who to ask. And that person might not know, but they might know someone who does. And I think we can all support each other. There is funding, there is support. We just have to find out where to get it. And I think this project has really rejuvenated these public spaces, so people are more interested in, they think, well, actually, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can apply for funding. Maybe I can look into it. Maybe I can go to this organization and ask if I can do a project. Maybe, hopefully that is the thing that I've sort of noticed and felt, and I hope happens. Thanks.
I would echo that. I've also realized that one of my slides didn't actually appear on my slideshow, which is slightly awkward, but it kind of relates to what Verity was saying, because I think there's definitely a flaw in the current kind of mainstream response to violence against women and girls in terms of focusing on policing, CCTV, and lighting being the main ones. What we're saying in this project is that it's so much more than that. It's more than putting, whilst that can contribute to making people feel safer. The CCTV one is actually quite an interesting conversation. We spoke to local people and there were quite varied responses to that, which was quite interesting. The lighting one does come up quite a lot, but I think it then is a conversation around what kind of lighting and the type of lighting and who's involved in those conversations, because that makes a massive difference as well. But through this project, like Verity was saying, it's that kind of community, it's the connecting people together. It's about creating that sense of belonging through identifying and amplifying kind of what's already there, that already add value to people's lives that people might not necessarily know about. So it's really spotlighting great work that's going on already, and also connecting people together, about kind of collaboration and community cohesion, taking care of public spaces, and reclaiming those spaces so that people have a sense of pride and ownership about the places that they live and about the places that they love, because we want people to want to be out in these spaces, and the evidence is showing. You just have to look at how many fans were at the women's games, for one. People want to be involved in these kind of cultural and local events, but right now that landscape doesn't really allow them to do that. So I think it's just that the power of what happens when people come together is really what's happening through this project. And we've been saying throughout this time, and particularly in the last 6 months, when there's been a lot of delivery going on of activities and the different kind of interventions, we know it's working when the movement moves without you, and that is happening more and more, especially towards the end. We're getting people kind of approaching us or partners or groups that they know are involved in this work, asking how to be involved and what they can do to support. So it's really, really positive to see that we're making waves and we're making noise, and it's just a case of continuing that and keeping that momentum going through people, it won't happen without them.
Thanks for that. Mark, you have a question?
Not necessarily a question. I suppose it's what Imogen just touched on about safe spaces and creating spaces, public spaces where the public, the community can just go and dwell. Doesn't take any money for people to create that space, or indeed to occupy that space and feel safe in that space. So for me, it's about, we have lots of green spaces in North Sea, Stratford, and Gorsall, and this project was about sort of trying to connect people to those spaces again. I suppose 2 years of lockdown, people sort of maybe don't feel comfortable in open spaces or outdoors as much as they used to. So for me, and we did through Verity, we did a family fun day and a large open space in Old Trafford. And it proved to be okay. People just got together and people met their neighbours, and sometimes it's just people meeting other people in the same space. It makes all the difference.
I agree, Fab. Thank you.
Thank you for agreeing with that. Thank you. He didn't have to. Well, thank you.
I got one more question, which is an open one for anyone really, but it's about the part of legacy about this project, the Right to the Streets, and what's next, and is there anything for the rest of Greater Manchester?
Yeah, really good question. So there are a few things that we could touch on. So one event that I would highlight that would be a really good one to come to if you're around for it, James, is the Legislative Theatre event happening on the 21st of September. That's really focusing on kind of what's next in terms of rewriting policies. So Verity, we have an actor among us. Legislative Theatre has kind of focused on a group of local people coming together as actors to highlight and to kind of identify and establish key themes that have come out throughout this project, and then perform a play that highlights those themes, coming up with solutions and ideas that have kind of emerged throughout this project. And at that event, we have a kind of policy team panel made up of people from Trafford, but also Greater Manchester as well, who are kind of going to help rewrite those local policies and procedures and actually commit to next steps. So that would be a really good one for you to come along to hear kind of what comes out of that. So yeah, that's on the 21st of September at Stretford Public Hall. I'll put a link in the chat, or I can contact you afterwards about the details there. It's on our Eventbrite page as well, the sign-ups for that, and that's open to anyone, so that would be great. Also, in terms of legacy, any kind of, we're creating as a kind of partnership, a lot of toolkits that would be really useful after September for people to use in their own spaces. One of this is kind of, we're working with Publica, who are a public realm practice who kind of focus on urban design and the physical environment, and they've written reports and blogs and turned a big kind of literature report that focused on these kind of themes around violence against women and girls and the design of a place and the environment contributing to people's experience and perceptions of belonging and safety into games, card games, but also kind of other kind of tangible physical things that you can take into workshops in spaces that you might be in as well. So that might also be a really good one to look at, which will all kind of be available on the GM Moving Resource Hub. And yeah, in terms of kind of the bystander training sessions, we also have physical assets, which I have on maybe usually have one right here, kind of these little pocket size Z cards that kind of open up and give you a kind of bite-sized version of the training that Freedom Personal Safety have been doing with different people in and around Trafford. That would be quite good. And there'll also be online versions of those as well on the resource hub for you to be able to take into your own spaces. But also I would say, you know, if you're interested in kind of your workforce or your staff members or anyone else you might know who was interested in actually participating in those sessions, the celebration event on the 24th of September would be a really good place to get an idea of what that might look like. Freedom Personal Safety are going to be there doing condensed sessions. The sessions are usually 2 to 3 hours long, and we didn't really I think that would be most appropriate for a kind of full community day, but they're doing bite-sized versions of their sessions in person on the 24th, if you want an idea of what that might look like. But a lot of this will be the kind of physical and tangible things that you can take into your own spaces are all going to be available in the resource hub. And then the learnings, I feel like I'm going on here, the learnings as well. Trafford was not the only borough in Greater Manchester that received the Safer Streets funding from the Home Office. So the idea is, you know, we've been linking it with GMCA around their Is This Okay campaign as well. They've been really, really supportive. But I think it's sharing the learnings, both kind of regionally and nationally as well. We're in conversations with you know, people in London and Leeds who held a really, really interesting Safer Parks conference a few months ago, just to get an idea of what other people are doing and what other places are doing around these kind of themes, and to make their spaces and cities more inclusive and safer and more joyful. So it's those kind of sharing the learnings that would be really, really important and really interesting to see crossovers there. So it's hard to know what that might look like yet, but we'll keep people updated with what we find. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I'll just jump in to say that I've got like a slide with the Eventbrite page for people to see. But I see Mark has a question. Also, just looking at the time, I know it's past, so if you do have to go, feel free, this is recorded. But if you don't mind staying for a bit longer, that's great too. Mark?
Hello. I just want to put a big up and a shout out there to Verity as a community connector, but also there's a strategic point around it in regards to the demise of community connectors, community builders, neighbourhood officers, community development officers, because they're, in my experience, they're one of the first people to go when cuts are being made or when there's a budget needs to be saved. And so the people within the communities who connect other community organisations and individuals to others for me, is a vital role. And if it's right to the streets or other aspects where we want to create civic places and public places where people can gather freely and safely, then having connectors, call them whatever you wish, but having people who can make that happen and can put people in touch with other people, is a vital, for me, is a vital resource. And that resource has been diminished over the last, well, I would think about 10 years, but certainly since the lockdown, those resources. And I'm sat now in Limelight in Old Trafford, and in this building there used to be 2 community builders working with local communities to get things done for local people. Now there's none for this particular area. They've been reduced by half, and now they've got a bigger area. And so even as social landlord in the building that we're working, is also thinking that actually people working with people talking to people is not necessarily the way forward. Where firstly, I think if you need to get people talking, that's not online and it's not via social media app. There you go. That's me. I don't know whether you agree with that.
I do. And so does Imogen. She says that lots of people are doing wonderful things that might not know about each other. So, all the crossovers in different spaces, which is great to have a project like this. And Verity, thank you for what you've done so far. Thank you also to Imogen and Ella who have spoken today. I'm just going to briefly share my screen again. Just to kind of plug all the events that are going on with the Right to the Streets project. Again, as mentioned, you can find out about them, register to them on the Eventbrite page. There is also the Instagram, which has the campaign, No Place for It, which you can see on Verity's screen. Plugged it for us. You can find that at Right to the Streets _. Next week, we have Diva, who will be kind of talking about how they've created the No Place for It campaign in order to support the Right to the Streets project. So they'll be talking about their process. And then the week after, we will have Freedom Personal Safety, who will talk about the bystander training that they've been delivering in the area. So I just want to say thank you again to everyone for coming and contributing. I've had some nice tidbits and comments and questions. It's been a really engaging session, and I've liked what I've heard about the connections and legacy aspects of the project from those who spoke. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Oh yeah, also we'll say join us on the 24th of September to find out more about the continuation of the project. That will be at Stretford Town Hall. Yeah, but again, do look at the Eventbrite for everything. Have a nice afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Thanks, Troy.
Thank you, Imogen.